What is it about microphones? It like adds a level of legitimacy. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Neida, and this is a little slice of the internet where I talk about literally whatever I want. I feel light, I feel giggly, I feel rejuvenated, and today I'm here to talk to you about books. This is one of my shticks on this little channel of mine. I talk about books, I talk about movies, I talk about TV shows, I talk about history, politics, really, like I said, it's anything that I want. But today I wanted to talk to you about every single book that I have bought since I've been in Scotland. I got to Scotland in September, mid-September. And I'm here doing graduate school. I don't know if you guys knew, I'm in graduate school. I never talk about it. But I'm living here for the next year and a bit. We'll see how the visa situation ends up going. Regardless, I've been buying some books. Now, mind you, I'm doing it in moderation, which is something that I never could have said at another point in my life. I think since I've been here, I've been going to bookstores, used bookstores, charity shops, independent bookstores, and the like, and picking up some interesting faves. So I'm going to let you know where I got these books, if I can remember, and what they're about and why I bought them. Yep. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I talk about a lot of interesting topics, and I have to say, I was scrolling through my YouTube a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, damn, banger after banger. How many people can say that? You know, banger after banger. Very few people can relate. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like books, if you like book hauls, if you like hearing people talk about books. And without further ado, we're going to get straight into it. We're going to start with some sleeper hits. First up, we have Just Listen by Sarah Dessen. Now, I know this lady is weird. I know she had a whole weird situation on Twitter about her book being chosen or not chosen as the book to read for college, for the freshman, whatever. I also know that she raised me. Now, what that says about me? Many things that are not good. Okay. And many things that are indicative of the way that I exist in relationships to this day. We're not going to get into any of that because we are just going to talk about this book and why I bought it. This is my, I think, second favorite Sarah Dessen. My favorite Sarah Dessen book is called Dreamland. It's about this girl who's like in an abusive relationship with an older man, and I'm pretty sure she wrote it after she realized that like one of the older men who she had dated when she was a teenager was actually like a creep. I love that book. If I find that book in a bookstore, I'm absolutely buying it. It's so beautifully written, and I feel exactly the same way about Just Listen by Sarah Dessen. This is about a young woman named Annabelle who is a model. She's a model who experiences a moment of trauma in the summer between her sophomore and junior years of high school, and she stops talking to people. It's not like she stops talking to people. It's not like Speak, where the main character is like mute the entire book, but she like stops talking to all of her friends and becomes a loner. And then she meets a guy who always walks around with headphones. He's like obsessed with music, and his name is Owen, I think, and they hijinks ensue and they end up falling in love. It's a very simple story, but like it's about like youth, beauty, what it's like to be the person who seems like they have it all, when in reality, the reality behind the scenes is a lot more complicated. And it's a cute little love story. He like makes her mixtape. I love this book. I'm so glad that I own it now, and I can't wait to reread it. The next book that I got is another classic, and that is Anne of Green Gables. This book is one that I bought at this cute little bookstore in town called Citadel Books, which is owned by a man who I'm pretty sure is the former Scottish poet laureate or national novelist. I'll put his information up, and I'll put the bookshop up. I love that bookshop. It's really cute. It's him and his wife who run it. There you have like a very interesting, very eclectic collection of books, and Anne of Green Gables is one of the ones that I decided to pick up. So either at the beginning of this year or the end of last year, my friend Claire made me sit in her basement and forced me to watch Anne of Green Gables, the 1980s miniseries. I say forced me to watch because I was always kind of scared of it because I knew that something sad was going to happen, and I try to avoid media that's going to make me sad. But oh boy, was it well worth it. We had to stop at a certain point because I kept sobbing uncontrollably. whenever the old man would come on screen, because I love old men, but which makes me sound a little crazy. But I had an old dad. It's the whole thing. I don't want to date old men. I just think that they're really cute and I want good things to happen for them. But this is a book about a young girl named Anne who is an orphan, and she lives on Prince Edward Island in Canada. She doesn't really have anywhere to live. She's supposed to stay with a family, then they're like, we can't take care of her anymore, so she ends up being adopted by a brother and a sister named Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert, and they take her in, and at first they're like, what the fuck are we supposed to do with this redheaded bitch? We asked for a little boy. She eventually endears herself to them, and they become best friends and also parents to her, and Matthew gets her a dress with puffed sleeves, and it is a beautiful story. I've never read this book. I know this is a classic that a lot of people read when they're kids. I've never read it. I love children's books. I think it's going to be sad and I'm going to cry a lot because it makes me sad when it makes me sad when children are treated poorly and they feel like they're not wanted and they're not going to be cared for or looked after, and that absolutely is the case for Anne. But I know that this is a whole book series and eventually she gets a happy ending. I just have to get there. But I'm excited to go on the journey of this book and to eventually finish watching the series with Claire. The next book that I got at Citadel Books is The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. I read The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas at the beginning of the year, and I really liked it. I listened to the 47-hour-long audiobook, and I was eating up every second of it. I was absolutely eating it up. I had such a good time listening to it, all the twists and turns in the story. It did get a little bogged down by the middle. It's a great book, and I was like, I should read more Dumas. The Three Musketeers takes place in the 1620s at the court of Louis XIII, where the musketeers, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, with their companion, the headstrong D'Artagnan, are engaged in a battle against Richelieu, the king's minister, the beautiful, unscrupulous spy Milady. Behind the flashing blades and bravura, in this first adventure of the Musketeers, Dumas explores the eternal conflict between good and evil. I'm fascinated by French history, particularly the history of the French monarchy and the ways that it transformed over time, the different power players within the French monarchy. And I love that one of the things that Alexandre Dumas does with his books is takes French history and kind of finds little holes in it for him to then build a story out of. And so I'm pretty sure that D'Artagnan was a real musketeer in the French military, and I think he was alleged to have had an affair with the queen at the time. And then this book series is kind of taking that story and mythologizing it in a way that I think is going to be really fun and really interesting, and I can't wait to read it because I know this man to be a good writer. Next up, the final classic that I cannot believe that I put Just Listen by Sarah Dessen in the section of classics. The final classic that we have is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. I have always wanted to read this book because I've heard that it is the best of the three Bronte sisters novels. I read Jane Eyre in 2022. I read Wuthering Heights last year, and I don't know that I will get through The Tenant of Wildfell Hall this year, so it probably won't be a three-peat, but I'm going to read it eventually, and I'm going to finish it eventually. This book was scandalous. I know that after she died, Charlotte Bronte ended up burning a lot of Anne's papers, and a lot of Emily's papers too, I think because she didn't want them to be steeped in scandal. But this book is... The mysterious new tenant of Wildfell Hall has a dark secret, but as the captivated Gilbert Markham will discover, it is not the story circulating among local gossips. Living under an assumed name, Helen Graham is the estranged wife of a dissolute rake, desperate to protect her son from his destructive influence. Her diary entries reveal the shocking world of debauchery and cruelty from which she has fled, combining a sensational story of a man's physical and moral decline through alcohol, a study of a marital breakdown, a disquisition on the care and upbringing upbringing of children, and a hard-hitting critique of the position of women in Victorian society. This passionate tale of betrayal is set within a stern moral framework tempered by Anne Bronte's optimistic belief in universal redemption. Drawing on her first-hand experiences with her brother Branwell, Bronte's novel scandalized contemporary readers. It still retains its power to shock. I love scandal. I love mess. And this is basically like, I guess, like if when Isabella Linton escaped from Heathcliff, if she, instead of dying, had just like went to go live at a house under an assumed name. It was scandalous in part because divorce was scandalous. It was scandalous in part because living apart from your God-sealed spouse was scandalous. And then also the added fact of like taking the children, like your husband, in this worldview, your husband owns you and your children. So you absconding with your child is like theft, essentially. The main character of this book, is robbing her husband of an heir to his family. And it doesn't matter if he's an alcoholic. It doesn't matter if he's physically abusive. It doesn't matter if he kills them. It's his right to treat them however he's going to treat them. And this book kind of turns that on its head, and like it says, could end up being a story about redemption. Who knows? I hope so. I'm excited to be scandalized, and I'm excited to read this. That being said, people were also allegedly scandalized by Wuthering Heights, and like the most scandalous thing that happens in that book is like Hindley like almost killing his baby. Oh, well, I just remembered something. That's bad, but I won't say it because Claire is in the room with me and she's reading it and I don't want to spoil it. So me and Claire went to a book fair a couple of weeks ago. I'll put the poster up of it. It was for Lighthouse Books, which is a radical bookstore in town in Edinburgh, and we both got a bunch of books at the book fair. So the first book that she got is Now Go, on grief and Studio Ghibli, which has the little pixelated portrait of No Face on it. This is about like grief, working through grief through the lens of the Studio Ghibli movies. This book is not for me necessarily because I only watched my first Studio Ghibli movie like a week ago. However, I did see it and I did think to myself, I feel like Claire would really like that. And she ended up buying it. This is basically a pile of books that I looked at and said, Claire would probably like that. And she ended up buying them. We next up have Meat Love, An Ideology of Flesh. I hate the word flesh. It's so like, bleh. By Amber Hussein. And this book says, in an era of climate catastrophe and corporate agribusiness, meat has been decisively made over. Urbanites across the West are called upon to look at the animals we eat, and by looking, learn to treat them with love. We are asked to tenderize our carnal desire for flesh and dignify our relationship with the land. Yet can our appetite for meat be redeemed by this new way of seeing? Can an ethical approach to the farming, sale, and consumption of meat really save both the planet and our souls? In Meat Love, Amber Hussein deconstructs the beauty, tragedy, and mystery with which our images of meat are embellished, drawing on a range of visual sources from contemporary art and film to Instagram and advertising. Probing the nature of love in contemporary human-animal relations, this illustrated essay casts a materialist's critical eye on the visual culture of meat as it gentrifies and mutates, informing for better or for worse our political imagination. I've been thinking a lot about meat and the way that I consume meat, the way that I eat meat, the types of meat that I think are acceptable to eat and not acceptable to eat. And so I think that this would be a really interesting book. I think we could all stand to like not take for granted the idea that like animals exist solely to be meat for us, and that the way that we live with them, treat them, interact with them it's okay for it to be unethical if it's cheaper and more like cost effective and advantageous for the producers. Like the meat is not going to taste that good, first of all. Second of all, an animal does not deserve to live a life. It doesn't matter if it's being raised for slaughter. It does not deserve to live a life of abject fear and despondency just because it is an animal that is being raised for slaughter. I could get into this. I'm not going to. I just know that I was at the Edinburgh City Farmers Market. I got a pulled pork sandwich and I was in line and there was this American girl behind me with a thick Southern accent, and she was like, oh, this just reminds me that this meat is an animal. I don't like that. And her family was like, what? And she was like, I just don't like to know that my meat used to be an animal at some point. And I think you should have to look what you're eating in the face and accept that you're eating it. Like, I think that should be a requirement for because when we detach ourselves from the process of the production of the food that we consume, we then assume that the consumption itself exists in a vacuum when it doesn't. It exists in context with all types of structures in the world. Next up, she got Cruelty is Citizenship, How Migrant Suffering Sustains White Democracy. And this is by Cristina Beltran. More than a decade before the election of Donald Trump, vitriolic and dehumanizing rhetoric against migrants was already part of the national conversation, situating the contemporary debate on immigration within America's history of indigenous dispossession, chattel slavery, the Mexican-American War, and Jim Crow. Cristina Beltran reveals white supremacy to be white democracy, a participatory practice of racial violence, domination, and exclusion that gave white citizens the right to both wield and exceed the law. Still, Beltran sees cause for hope in growing movements for migrant and racial justice. I think this could be an interesting way of tying the way that democracy in the United States specifically developed to the dispossession of people of colors other than white. And it's an exciting read. It's kind of short. Kind of want to borrow it and read it. And the last book that I saw and knew that Claire was going to buy is called Border Abolition Now. This is an essay collection, I think, that's edited by Sarah Rivas, Simon Campbell, Brian Whitener, and Catherine Median. This is various different takes on the ideas of borders, the concept of borders, what borders do and don't do, what they should and shouldn't do, and how they shouldn't exist, because they're all just fake lines that somebody drew on a map somewhere. Can you tell what alignment the people in this household have? Can you tell? Okay, we're gonna try and do this really quickly so that my phone storage doesn't fill up. The books that I got at the book fair were The Little Black Book of the Populist Right by John Bloomfield and David Edgar. I think we do too much avoiding of evil, and we need to look evil right in the face and understand where they're coming from, how we got here, so that we can understand how to stop them. This says, the specter of the populist right haunts our politics. Farage and Trump, Orban and Le Pen. Why and how has this reactionary movement managed to redraw the political map from Warsaw via Workington to Wisconsin? At last, in one short book, an authoritative, accessible history and analysis of the populist right. I'm not going to read the rest of it, but it is just trying to understand how and why the populist right is so appealing to so many different people, because it's not just white people, it's not just a white working class, it's not just in the United States, it's all over the world. How and why is it spreading, and how can we mitigate it? And then finally, I got The Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. I have wanted to read this book for years. This is the book that the movie The Handmaiden is based off of, and it's basically the story of this young girl named Sue Trinder who lives in a home for orphaned children, and she is caught up in a scheme to steal the inheritance of another young woman by swapping them, but they kind of look alike. I don't know. There's a whole situation in it, and they may or may not fall in love. One of David Bowie's top 10 books. Well, that is the only stamp of approval that I needed from this. And it was also shortlisted for the Booker and the Women's Prize for Fiction. The last two books that I got were releases from this year and releases that were highly anticipated for me. So we are going to start with the kind of sleeper hit, and this is Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. This is a sequel of sorts to There, and it, in the inside jacket, says that it tells the unforgettable story of 3 generations of a Native American community. It spans from the horrors of the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864 and the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, an institution dedicated to the eradication of Native history, culture, and identity, to the aftermath of a powwow in Oakland, California, which is at the heart of Tommy Orange's extraordinary debut, There. I read one of the chapters from There. It's a standalone. A lot of the stories in Tommy Orange books can kind of work as standalone short stories on their own. So I remember reading a chapter from There for one of my writing classes in college, and I was like, oh my god, this is the thing, and he's doing it. He's doing the thing, and he's doing it so well. And so I've always wanted to read a Tommy Orange novel. I'm pretty sure this was also shortlisted for the Booker, but it doesn't say that on the front because I think this issue was printed before that happened. That is the case, and I also have a huge crush on Tommy Orange. He's sexy and beautiful, and I would let him shoot up this club. I would. Oh, I gotta stop looking at this picture. And the final book that I got is a highly anticipated read from me. This is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I already started reading this. It's already so good. This is the story of two brothers who are reeling from the loss of their father and dealing with the grief of their loss. The older brother is embroiled in an age gap relationship with a younger woman who's about, I think, like 22. And the younger brother, who's 22, is embroiled in an age gap relationship with an older woman who is in her 40s, so about the same age as his brother. And the two stories, the two relationships are a part of their ways of dealing with the grief that they experience from losing their dad. It's already so beautifully written, and I think I'm on chapter like 3. I'm so excited. Oh yeah, and there's like a whole thing. There's like a chess. His younger brother, I'm pretty sure, is undiagnosed or diagnosed as autistic and is really into chess and is really good at chess. I cannot wait to finish this book. I love Sally Rooney. It feels like a bookend for me because when I came here in 2019, I bought Normal People and I read Normal People, and that sent me down my Sally Rooney journey. I read Normal People and then I read Conversations with Friends. I never read Beautiful World, Where Are You? It just didn't really appeal to me, the plot of it. However, now I'm here again 5 years later and I am reading Intermezzo, and I feel a lot of the same feelings that I had when I was reading Normal People, which are, wow, these characters are amazing. Oh my God, this writing is crazy. Like, it just kind of melts onto the page. That is every single book that I have bought since I've been in the UK. These are all books that I'm going to read, and hopefully this time next year, these will be included in a little reading wrap up from me telling you what I thought about these reads over the course of 2025. But yeah, I'm going to keep you guys posted about everything I am watching, reading, listening to, enjoying, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. If you've made it to this point of the video, thank you. Please hit the subscribe button down below. I put out videos whenever I can about literally whatever I want. Any type of pop culture phenomenon, historical issue that is interesting to me. I just like to talk. That's what it is. I like to talk and I like to hear myself talk. And not very many people would admit either of those things. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really does help me to find other people who would be interested in my content. It tells the algorithm that you're interested in my content and it pushes it out more. And if you have read any of the books that were included in this, let me know what you thought of them in the comments down below. Commenting is another thing that can really tell the algorithm that you enjoyed a video. So let me know what you thought of them, if you've read one of them, or if you just would like to read one of them. But yeah, thank you again for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!